RPC is here helping us place the rocks in a crevice garden. The rock work and the fundamentals of the structure of a garden are pretty important, and this is a neat tool. It certainly is able to place things very nicely. And we're going to go forward just a little here, and that'll be in place. That's the biggest piece right there. Set it in. Hi, now we're busy here about to plant this garden bed. We finished placing the rocks, so you can see that we put in a large piece at the top of this berm. We built this up quite a bit. It's tall, above my waist high, and we built a crevice garden here with a lot of vertically situated rocks with some spaces in between, and that will allow us to put special plants that like this sandy soil we specifically put in this location to establish themselves here. These will be dwarf things that grow in tight little buns and mats, and will make a very interesting feature to this garden so that there's more to it than just a typical planting bed. We'll begin by putting a few of the conifers into the bed, because when you're trying to place and design a bed, you want to start with the structural material. This one is Chief Joseph. It's the brightest gold pine imaginable. And that will grow to become the main focal point of this garden. Some things we have to be patient with. That's one of them. We simply can't buy a big one, it's too rare. So we go ahead and start it as a small plant and pay the price of waiting, but it's a fabulous plant. And to anchor the end, I'll use a creeping form of blue spruce called procumbens. It'll creep down this whole side. Now I'm going to take a little break, and by magic, when we come back, all the plants are going to be laid out. Now the layout is complete. So we are looking at what appears to be a huge amount of plants in the garden, but actually it always has this impression until they get planted that there's an awful lot of material in this garden. But once it's planted, it won't look like so many. So this is kind of a point in the design process where people often kind of panic and go, gee, is that too many plants? But once this grows together into one giant flower bouquet in the summer, they're very happy to have the number of plants that have been placed, because this is a good compromise between room to grow, especially with all the major woody material. There's lots of room for them so they can grow to their full size. These are very columnar and narrow forms of weeping Alaskan cedars that will keep their shape, but and keep to their size limitations. And we've used a lot of very choice dwarf conifers like this little Tom Thumb, Picea orientalis. It's a little spruce, it's tiny, and it works out where everything is placed, and it should be. Now it'll just be a quick plant it and then top dress it, and we are complete. And now the Riverview project has got the plants in the ground, and it will be, of course, a few months, since this is February, before we get to see it come into its full glory. But even this time of year, there's lots of evergreen material, so there's interest all season. The rocks that we use give it some structure. The some of the plants, like this Osteospermum, are already blooming. That's Pinus contorta Chief Joseph. That's one of the brightest colored pines of all. Probably the brightest gold in winter. Once that gets to 4 or 5 feet tall, it will be a spectacle. It's a very rare plant and not available for purchase at that size at this time. It's a relatively new and very rare plant. And then here we have the crevice garden with the vertically aligned rocks set by the RPC rock placing tool. And this garden will feature a lot of smaller alpine type plants that will form little mats and buns, and should be quite interesting. We'll get a gravel mulch on this. The bark hasn't been added yet to this garden, and it will get a light bark application. These weeping Alaskan cedars, one of them's a little bit has a little bit of a loop to it, so we're going to probably put a stake on that. There's that's gold pillar barberry. It's one of the brightest things in fall. We see here another plant trying to bloom still. That's Rocky's Purple Abretia. In between the two Rocky's Purples will be a Genista Bengal, so that will be a very colorful corner. Lots of flowers in here of all sorts, Coreopsis and Delospermas and Helianthemums and Iberis and so on and so on and so on. There's a host of different plant material in this garden and ornamental grasses. That's a Japanese maple there, a red leaf Japanese maple that of course looks like a stick right now this time of year, but will be pretty. That's Tom Thumb, a little rare spruce that's very, very compact little ball. And that brings us back to the end here where you can see the whole garden in its effect. That this is a garden that will have a complete year-round interest, but of course it's built mostly for summer color. There will be a number of roses, a number of there's the low ground cover kind of roses, the drift roses that are in here that will give a great deal of bright bloom, and there's also lots of the perennials in here are extremely strong blooming, so the color in this garden will be pretty exceptional. We had a great time doing it, and we love making gardens at Tower Perennials, so we'd be happy to make one for you too. Thanks.